Welcome back everyone, Mudford here. Out in the shop today, working on the sleeper Buick Regal. We're trying to get this thing ready for Rocky Mountain Race Week. My goal now is to run the 13.0 class with this car. So we figured, well, we've got snow here on the ground in Michigan. I'm going to fix a few things on it. One of the big things I noticed is when I take off, the back end feels like it drops down a foot. I know it's not really that much, but you can just watch the back end sink in the car. And I think my struts are worn out. I went ahead and got a pair of Monroe drop-in struts with the new springs in them. And then we have some rust issues underneath. Yeah, the car's been taken care of, but it's still 21, 22 years old in Michigan. So basically I am replacing all of the rear suspension and even the brackets. I saw those on Rock Auto. I got all these parts from Rock Auto, including the struts. And we're also replacing the gas tank straps. So today we're going to be putting all of these parts in. I do have front struts as well, but I'm going to wait and put those in later. I'm just going to do everything with the back end of the car right now. Got the wheel off. You can see I have some rust concerns under here. The strut's pretty rusted. I probably will replace the sway bar eventually. It is rusted right at the mounts. I think the first thing I'm going to do is get the strut loose and get it out. So I'm going to be cutting the sway bar link first. So I got the sway bar link cut with just a grinder with a cutoff wheel. Now I'm going to have to buy a new one of those. They're not worth it because usually they're rusted and they don't come off real easy. So I don't even like to play around with them. Just buy new ones and replace them. Next thing I'm going to do is get these bolts out of the strut. You can see it won't take a socket on this side. You can get a wrench to hold it if you need to. And then I'm going to impact it from the other side. So I ended up taking the caliper off. It's just two bolts. And wired it up out of the way because I will be taking the rotor and the whole hub assembly off. And I could not get to that bolt with the brake hose in the way. I got the ABS wire disconnected right there, just because it was right in front of that nut. And what I'm going to have to do next is I put the nuts back on started so they're flush, and I'm going to have to drive the bolts out. So I didn't want to damage that wire. Had to get my caliper out of the way for a second so I could get a good swing on the hammer. Now I'm going to hang the caliper back. I'm going to disconnect the control arms now that hook to the hub here. So I'm going to take this nut off, and the bolt, it goes all the way through. It's a really long bolt, so I'm going to have to hold it on the other side right over here, and then I'm going to put my impact over here. Okay, got it loose. I'm gonna go after this one now. This is the trailing arm bolt. Once I get these out, this whole assembly will be loose. I can kind of set it off to the side, and then we can get these control arms and trailing arms out, hopefully.
hoping now we can get to the trailing arm bolt a little easier, because we can kind of swing it around however we want now. Was able to get the nut loose by double wrenching here, but my impact is not even touching the bolt side of it yet. So I'm just going to keep working on this. I'll spray some penetrating lube in there and hopefully I can get the bolt out. So I got the strut out. There's just 3 nuts from up inside the trunk. I'll show you that in a minute. But then it falls right out. But you can see I do have some rust issues up there. Not real happy about that. Can't really do very much from up here because there's just not any room. So we're changing this whole bracket here on the front of this trailing arm. And it actually works out pretty good for us, because when we take those bolts out, this whole bracket will drop. And then we can get the bolt out a lot easier. So I've taken 2 of the bolts out already. I got 1 more to pop out, and then this whole bracket will fall, and then we will get the control arm. Once I got the emergency brake disconnected, right there is where it hooks. It comes through there. There's a clip, and then it hooks around that. I was able to drag this out. And now hopefully we can get these soaking with some penetrating oil and get this arm all the way off. Having trouble with the bolts on the trailing arm. What I had to do was cut the trailing arm. I cut it like that to get it off, and then cut the rubber bushing off on one end. We'll see if I can save the bolt or not. It doesn't look that bad, but the sleeve here, it's seized into, so what I'm going to do is heat that with the torch and then hit this with the impact at the same time, and hopefully it will come loose and still be intact. Okay, it looks like it's not moving because now it's cooled off some. So I'm going to go ahead and heat it back up with it in the press and see if that works. Okay, I got it really hot. And the bolt is finally starting to move. Now that we got it started, I got some vice grips on that sleeve, and now I'm going to try spinning the bolt out. There we go. That's 1 bolt out. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up, and I will put NICs on it. Okay, used a razor blade and cut the rubber bushing off, and now I'm going to apply heat right here to the sleeve, and then we're going to try buzzing it out, and hopefully it'll come out. So that came off pretty good. I think it was just corrosion between the aluminum and the steel. The bolt Came right out of the sleeve. I'm gonna need to take this whole assembly here that goes over to the other side out in order to get these arms out because of the way the bolts are in there. So I think what we'll do is start working on the other side, and I'll probably even take the sway bar out and we'll at least inspect it and see how corroded it is there. So the next step on this rear suspension is I'm going to tear everything apart on the driver's side, just like I did on the passenger side. Okay, looking at it a little bit closer, the gas tank is actually bolted up to the body of the car up there on the like a frame cross member, so we can drop this out without taking the gas tank loose. So what I'm going to do now is get the parking brake cables disconnected so that we can drop this down and separate it from the exhaust here. And then we'll go ahead and drop it down, and then I will get the other gas tank strap because it'll be a lot easier. I did get this one loose already. I think all I need to do now is take these 2 bolts out on each side that hold the rear subframe in. So I'm going to go ahead and get them loose, and then I'm going to put the jack under it so I can slowly lower it down. Because the exhaust is in the way on the other side, it's going to have to slide out this way. I took the sway bar off before I took it out too. Probably could have took it out easy enough with it in, but I just thought it'll just be a little bit less awkward, a little bit easier. And it was only 2 bolts. So now I just got some 21s on here, and hopefully we're going to get these control arms off. And then while this cross member is out, I'm going to go ahead and get both gas tank straps replaced. I'm going to go ahead now and put the front arms in. They're the non-adjustable ones. And then I'm going to take my adjustable arms and match them exactly the same length with the ones I took out, and then I will put those ones back in. Okay, how I'm doing this is I put a bolt through and it goes most of the way through both of them. And I can see over here I'm a little short. So I'm going to go ahead and spin this and adjust this until I get it out just a little further, and then I'll make sure the bolt fits in, and then I'll go ahead and tighten this down. Okay, you can see I got a bolt through both, so that should be pretty good. Now I just have to hold this and tighten those down. Ready to put the new control arms in. Okay, you can see up there the nice shiny new gas tank straps, replacing the rusted ones. Gas tank is pretty good. Has a little bit of rust on it, but it's not deep or anything. I have most all of the rust cut out on the driver's side strut tower. And I made this, I fit it into the top, cut it with the torch, drilled the holes where the struts are where the strut will mount. This part is gonna set on top of the strut tower, and this is gonna slide over into the fender, and then I'm gonna weld this in. And the way it's gonna set, try to show you. So it's gonna set up in here like this, and the end of it's gonna be the end of it's gonna be out here, and this is gonna get cleaned up and welded to here, and that will keep the strut tower from moving up. You can see I have 2 notches here. I did originally notch it here and bend it, and I was gonna weld this back in once I got to the angle I wanted, and that was too close to the strut tower, as you can see. So I'm gonna bend it here, get everything to fit correctly, and then I'm gonna weld beads across these, and then this will be bent up, and I'll fill that in with weld. And then I should have everything the way I need it. I'll clean everything up, and I think I have to trim the corner off here, and then I'll put this in place, weld it to the strut tower, weld this part to the fender, and that should be all the structural that we need here. And then I'm going to use some just sheet metal and fill in the rest. I got my plate cut to the shape I want. I've got the hole cut there where the strut goes through, and I've got the 3 bolt holes cut, and I also have it shaped the way I want. So I just have to weld up all the seams on the plate, and then I'm going to clean up here. I'm going to weld it along there and along this line here, and then on the top side as much as I can, which will probably only be on the back side. Okay, here's our reinforcement piece all welded up, and then we ground down this side because this is going to set right on top of the existing strut tower. Okay, I got my structural steel welded in here. I've got the reinforcement on top of the strut tower right here, and then welded here, and then it angles down, and then it welds on the inside of the fender here. It's kind of cobbled, but that should give it the strength it needs, and this is 3/16 steel, so it shouldn't let this push up anymore. So all I'm gonna do now is fill in these holes, and you can see it's welded across the back, around the corner. Not good welds. I don't claim to be the best welder, but that is pretty solid. Okay, I got all the holes patched. The welding looks like garbage. It's probably my least favorite thing to do, is to weld under a car. Usually it's metal that's too thin. You're blowing holes through it if you get it hot enough to heat up your new patch that you're putting in. It's just not any fun at all. And then I had sparks falling down on top of me the whole time. I'm just gonna grind this up a little bit, get some of the booger welds ground down some, and then slap at least some primer on it. So here's what we're dealing with on the other side. I'm gonna cut out a patch it there. There's a bad spot there on the other side, and actually in the front side on this one too. So I got a lot of work to do on this side. Never planned on doing this. Just wanted to throw some struts in real quick, so this has been kind of a pain. Okay, I made a little bit of progress today. You can see a lot of light coming from under there. I cut a lot of metal out, way more than the other side. And now I'm ready to make the 3/16 plate that's going to go across the top. And it's going to be just like the other side. It's going to go over into the fender so it can't move up any. Here's my piece I made to go on top of the strut tower. This is going to fit on top of the strut tower, and then it's going to slip down into the fender. Very similar to the other side. And it's about the same thickness as the other side. should make it pretty strong. First I've got to get a bend somewhere in here. The key in getting this panel to work good is getting some bends in it, spending some time getting it just the shape you want before you weld it in.
Got the piece in place, I think how I want it. I'm using my floor jack to push the metal up, hopefully pretty flush to the existing panel. I'm going to have to get it tacked in the corner over there where it's really close together, and then I'm probably going to have to reposition the jack and get the metal to bend a little bit so I can get the whole thing. Finally got all the welding done. I can put the welder away. Some of you will say that I probably should have put the welder away a long time ago. I'm going to go ahead and clean these up a little bit with the grinder and then get some paint on it. So both sides are done now. We're done here in the fender well too. Everything is sealed up now and doesn't look real good, but I'm going to clean it up and paint it and we'll call it good. I've got this patched here in the back seat as well. Everything is set now. Just going to clean things up and spray some primer on this and call it good. Still working on the back of this Buick. Got all the suspension components in. Just about wrapping it up, but now one of the big things I wanted to do was get the parking brake working on it, because I need that in order to hold the car when I do a burnout to warm up my drag radials. I think that'll help my quarter-mile times a little bit. So, of course, this being a 99, everything was junk back here. You can see the bracket and the spring and all that crap. I ordered a parking brake hardware kit from Rock Auto. Put the link in the description for that. Came with just about everything. So you got this backing plate that goes on here. And you've got your shoes and the adjusters and all that. This rocks when you pull the cable and it applies the brakes here. It pushes this out. It's a rear disc, but there's actually a drum for the parking brake in the disc. So anyway, this is a real pain to put back together. I had to do some junkyard hunting because I stupidly got rid of one of these. I replaced the wheel bearing on the other side, and when I did, I threw all this parking brake stuff away because I wasn't thinking that I would need it. But of course now I want it, so I ended up, I got everything in my kit except for this, so I had to go to a junkyard and get this. It's kind of a pain to get this all back together, so I'm going to go ahead and show you. This is like my third attempt. And unfortunately, when I was pulling it apart, I dropped the wheel bearing and busted the ABS. So I ended up having to spend some money. That's what's in the box here. Just got back from AutoZone with a new wheel bearing. But now I'm ready to put this all back together. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do that. Hopefully, if you watch this, it'll save you some time. I should have taken a picture before I took the first one apart, and I didn't. This is the right rear. This sets in the car like this, and then when you pull the parking brake, it pulls this lever. So we're going to go ahead and get this hopefully in here somewhat. So I'm going to make sure that this little rod goes in the cup here on this. Then I'm going to put that in the cup here. And that's kind of how it works. When you pull the lever, it's going to pull it out like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put the boot on now. And it's going to go with the taper towards the front of the car. So there's a groove down here where this is supposed to sit at, so you just got to get it started. So that's going to go through like this. but you'll see it doesn't fit snug. There's a gap here, and that is where the wheel bearing goes. But before you put the wheel bearing in, you're going to need to have these on. Oop. Got our new wheel bearing we're going to put in place here, and hopefully I won't drop it this time. The ABS plug needs to face the front of the vehicle. So I'm just gonna try to get this slid under there without knocking the brake shoes off. There. Okay, there we go. So that's all together now. You want to make sure your bearing is coming through the backing plate, and then you might have to do a little bit of work here to get lined up on this where the screws are going to go in here. So we got a bracket that goes here, and there's 2 Torx bits that are going to hold that in. What I'm doing now is just getting one of them started. Probably have to wiggle this around and get the other one started here. Oh, that went easier than I thought. We'll just use the Torx bit, get these tightened down. You want to make sure your wheel bearing is in the proper place before you tighten these up. Because right now mine's crooked. So we can loosen them up a little. There we go. Okay, now I made sure that these holes were lined up. Now, this actuator here is kind of pinching the bearing and holding it where it needs to be. We're going to go ahead and hook the spring up now. That's just going to go right in that groove right there. Down underneath of there. Like so. Be real careful not to drop this or damage this, because you'll be out $100 or however much you pay for your wheel bearing. So now the only thing is we're going to go ahead and bolt this in. So your parking brake cable will slide through here. It'll snap in place here, and then the end of the cable will go right here. And then when you pull the parking brake, it'll pull it.